What have you been seeing in terms of the willingness and the political will that's required to get more countries to sign up to the free trade agreement?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. This African Continental Free Trade Agreement is extremely critical for the transformation, economic and social, of the continent. And we need to salute the political will that has been unleashed earlier this year in March by having 44 heads of state sign on to the agreement. And we're seeing more countries signing in. And now the issue is really to get those signatures ratified through national parliaments by end of March next year for the agreement to enter into force. So this is progressing. We haven't reached yet the 50% threshold, but more and more countries are doing that, and a number of them are in the process of ratification. And we are confident that before the deadline of March next year, we will have more than the required number of ratification. So
I certainly hope so, Mamadou. I really do hope so, because at the last count, if I remember correctly, I had seen 4 countries that had ratified the agreement. Have we seen more coming on board since?
Yes, since then, actually, more countries have started the process already. We have 9 of them, in addition to the 4, actually, who have started, and others also are getting the due diligence to get this to their parliaments.
Okay, so let's talk about the agenda for Lagos. What are you guys trying to do?
Well, actually, 2 things. First of all is really to make sure that also those very important countries on the continent that have not signed have the information they need to make the decision to join. And one of them is Nigeria. Nigeria is the largest market on the continent, over 200 million people, and they haven't yet signed. But we are seeing good sign because the President, Buhari, earlier this week, late last week, actually instituted a new commission to assess the benefits and costs for their signing, which was not in place. So really, it's meaning that their partnership with us and the Economic Commission for Africa has really created a new momentum. So that's number 1, getting those to come in and join. Yep. The second is to fast track the ratification process. And number 3, and most important and extremely important, is already involving the African citizens, whether these are from private sector, whether they are think tanks, from civil society, because at the end of the day, if the agreement need to move from a signing to a real implementation, those actors need to be involved. So next week, later this week, we'll be really having concrete discussions around how do we practically move from a signed agreement to an implemented agreement, or how do we do that to fast track African agriculture transformation? How do we do that to accelerate access to electricity for millions of Africans through cross-border trading? How do we harness data and data analytics capability to monitor the implementation process, understand where the agreement, the implementation is lagging, what kind of intervention needs to be taken to make that a reality. So that's the agenda for later this week.
Absolutely. I like the symbolism of holding it in Nigeria, given the fact that, number 1, Nigeria is Africa's biggest economy. You spoke about the size of the market as well there, 200 million. 1 in 4 Africans, as we keep saying, or 1 in 5 Africans is Nigerian, and therefore it's very important that Nigeria is on board. Who else is coming to that gathering in Nigeria?
Well, actually, we have a private sector from all over the continent, led by the likes of Aliko Dangote and others. We have political leaders, President Kagame himself, who championed this, President Issoufou of Niger, who has been appointed as champion by his peers, of course, the President of Nigeria, and we have ministers of trade from many countries who will be coming also to discuss implementation and what is the second phase negotiation around the AfCFTA. So we have just African citizens. We have also young entrepreneurs, African entrepreneurs, because we might sign this today to start the implementation. But the effectiveness of such an agreement is we can't see until within 10 years, 15 years, 20 years from now. And if this has to be the reality, the young people who will be the one living the reality of it need to be involved today. So we have a good contingent of young entrepreneurs and African entrepreneurs and other Africans.
Absolutely. Mamadou, I wish you well, definitely, because it's very important that we get the continent going, and I see you've got most of the important stakeholders attending that conference. What's your sense, though, in terms of the impact that this agreement will make? Many people will make the point that when you look back over past African attempts to try to integrate the continent, they've largely been things that are signed, things that are spoken about, but very little in terms of transforming the trade ties between African countries themselves.
No, I think that there is really a big question, to your point, that we need to answer. We have all of these regional blocks, whether it is ECOWAS or East African Community or even SADC or COMESA. They have been doing great work, moving towards integration, but the pace has been still slow. And the big question to ask ourselves is, if those have not been as successful as we would have liked, what makes us believe that we can move and be successful at a continental level? So the key is here, what do we learn from those experiences that we can bring into this continental level? But what is really important is that if you take out of Africa, like Nigeria, the countries like Kenya, Ethiopia, 100 million people, etc. The bulk of African countries are around 14, 15 million in terms of population. Those are really very narrow markets, and it is different from really harnessing a 1.3 billion market on the African continent. You just reading your news, you were talking about some export bans from agricultural produce. So this is exactly the kind of, while in other places in Africa, actually you have food shortages and all of that. So these are exactly the real and concrete problems that the AfCFTA will solve. Though it will enable more flow of innovation, it will enable aggregation of capital, it will enable better and more needed infrastructure. So just to name a few, so the impact is huge and is going to be transformational if we do things right.